I'm delighted to be asked to speak to this. And I have to say that the work that we've been doing on warm season cover crops that I'll be sharing with you, I kind of think is a little bit out there. You know, I know of a couple of producers in our area who are using warm season cover crops. Most people are not. So, but we've had studies at the PMC and they've been really amazingly successful with a very small amount of irrigation. So this picture that I'm showing you here, and I'm hoping you can see my cursor. So we have, it's from last year's warm season cover crop, and this would have been about 60 days after planting. And we've just planted individual plots of different species. This is black-seeded sunflower. Behind there'll be a cowpea cultivar. Behind that, Sesbania. And then over here, probably Sudan grass, although we were growing millets as well. You can't really tell the difference. So, pretty cool. I wanted to share with you where we are because this is, it's important that you know how far we are. So I'm part of the Natural Resources Conservation Service. I'm actually manager of the Lockeford Plant Material Center, and our center is right here in Lockeford in the middle of the Central Valley. It's about an hour south of Sacramento where Rex works. So we are actually responsible for the Mediterranean climate area of California, which is kind of large. We just aren't responsible for the desert, but we are for your area down to San Diego along the coast. So of course, that's a lot of different crops, so many commodities, so much complexity, but the amount of cover cropping grown is really small. They estimate around 5%. And when I really dislike bare ground, and I see it under trees, and it's like, oh, why do we have this bare ground? So over the past 10 years, the Plant Material Center's emphasis has been really on testing cover crop cultivars for adaptation to California. Most of the work has been on cool season crops, and we have publications on our website that anybody can look at, but also this warm season work. So this slide is one of our replicated study, and we've been looking at grasses, legumes, and forbs really just to see, and generally they're very drought tolerant. We grow them at the Plant Materials Center with about less than 3 inches total irrigation water applied, which to me is just astonishing. Of course, they have to be planted in the spring or in the summer when soil temperatures are warm enough so you get rapid growth. And then winter kill will, when it frosts, they'll die. They slow down in the fall when temperatures get cooler, and if you get a frost, that's it, which is good. And that's how I got into this in the first place. A colleague was explaining one of the problems in California, in our area. A lot of the people who grow row crops don't want to put in cover crops because they think they won't be able to get in the spring. In case we have a late wet spring, they won't be able to prepare the ground, and so they don't plant them. And some cool season cover crops like vetches and so on don't really even start growing till late in the spring. So that was a reason. Another reason was they don't, if we're not irrigating, which is often the case here, they don't even germinate till after you get the first rains. That can be really late. And then also there's no cover when the fall rains do come, so you may get erosion. So we thought, well, let's try and see if we can plant warm season cover crops different times. The first study that we did was every 2 weeks starting in August through October, and we just looked at how well they grew. It wasn't a replicated study, and this is a case study, and I've given this to Joel so everybody can have this information. But it was really interesting. We tried Sudan grass, I think, and a millet and cowpeas. So then after that, we thought, well, let's try proper study, like as I showed you in the previous slide. And this case study is maturation dates. So this is just for 1 or 2 years, and when we talk about maturation, that's time to 50% bloom, which is typically when the maximum amount of nitrogen is in the above ground biomass. So that's when we count as maturity, and there were huge differences between the cultivars. So you guys should have a copy of that as well. I want to run through a little bit the different species that we've tried. Grasses, of course, have fibrous roots, and so they're great for reducing erosion and getting water down into the soil. They can really build soils quickly. They scavenge nitrogen, so that reduces erosion. They would also, as the previous speaker said, keep things cooler, increase nutrient cycling, and they're good for weed suppression. So this first one here is Sudan grass. Now, you may be familiar, people grow Sudan grass a lot in the Central Valley for forage. We're not really nuts about it at the PMC as a cover crop because it gets so damn big. And it needs a little more water than some of the other ones. It can have allelopathic effects. Oh, I went on to the next page. Proso millet is really drought tolerant, amazingly drought tolerant, and also it will it suppresses weeds very well and scavenges nutrients. Right now we have a study at the Plant Materials Center. We're looking at 8 different millet species and cultivars. So we'll know more about it, but certainly did very well. And then the one in the bottom is teff, which is native to Ethiopia, and it's a beautiful grass. It grows 2 or 3 feet high, but it has tiny seeds, so it's tricky to plant. And it makes wonderful hay. It's great hay for horses as well. And the residue decomposes quickly. It has fairly high levels of nitrogen. Legumes, of course, people that interested in legumes because they fix nitrogen. So that will reduce your fertilization you need to add. They also have other benefits, like there's a big taproot, so that can help with compaction, water infiltration. Depending on the species, they may host pollinators and beneficial insects. There are some that will suppress weeds and pests, but it depends species by species. Cowpea is one of our favorites. There's a lot of different cultivars. They're very drought tolerant. Don't grow that big, 2 or 3 feet tall, and because there's a lot of nitrogen, they'll break down quickly. The next one is sun hemp. This is a little less drought tolerant, grows bigger, 4 to 8 feet tall, but again, fixes a lot of nitrogen, 100 to 150 pounds per acre, which is good. It suppresses root knot nematode, and I know they grow this a lot in Florida in rotation with tomatoes. But you need to terminate when it's about 3 feet tall because it can get kind of woody. And a couple more legume species that we've grown. Both of these are native. Sesbania, which grows very tall, fixes a fair amount of nitrogen. It's very drought tolerant, but it gets woody really quickly. You need to terminate at 60 days. And to the right is tepary bean. And this is grown as a subsistence crop in the Southwest. It's low growing. Pollinators just love it. So that's another thing. It doesn't fix much nitrogen, but we're concerned that because it's a new phaseolus and we don't have the right inoculant, buckwheat, which is really a fast, quick cover crop, 45 days. And allows phosphorus and so on to come up into the soil. But you need to terminate, because otherwise you're going to get seeds and then it will keep on growing, although I have to say it's not much of a problem. Okay, this is California cover crop selection chart. This is actually a document on our website, and it was designed, we stole the idea from ARS, but it didn't really work for California. So this has been designed for cover crops we have grown in California and we're very comfortable will grow here. So the way it works, there's cool season to the left, warm season to the right, grasses, forbs, and legumes are in the middle. And you can see the warm season, there are fewer there. Actually, I need to revise this because it doesn't have Sesbania, and we found that chickpea didn't work that well for us. But you know, this is the thing with cover crops, it's always a work in progress, and you're trying to find out new things. That booklet on the website, after that first page with the periodic table of the cover crops, we have a separate page for each cover crop, and this has just basic information, how high they're likely to grow, if it's drought tolerant or not, you know, how much seed you need to plant it, what biomass can you expect. We tried to, you know, put in all this stuff that would be really helpful when people are selecting a cover crop, because I've had people come to me and say, well, I want nitrogen, I want a lot of nitrogen, and then you suggest something that's masses of nitrogen and a lot of biomass, and they are like, no, I wanted something, you know, knee high. That's not what they wanted, which is hard to do if you don't have much biomass, but still, it's figuring out what people want. So this, I'm going to talk a tiny bit more about our study that we've done for 4 years. We're just in the process of reviewing a paper that we have done, comparing, you know, the adaptation of the cover crops that we've seen where we are to where, you know, and how they do. And so it's specific to California. We do a lot of evaluations. We do germination and field emergence, canopy cover, the disease and insect resistance. We take photos. And we time 50% bloom because that's the maturation rate. We measure the height. We take above ground biomass, small plots, 1 foot per plot. But you know, if you've got Sudan grass or some of these sun hemps, they're quite a lot of biomass. And we find total nitrogen content, and we try and do moisture. I want you to include this photo on the right. It's actually one of our fails. Right at the beginning, we had a planter misfunction, and one of our plots, normally we just plant single species plots, but this was a malfunction and we had a mixture, and you can see it's just beautiful. You have sunflower growing, you have buckwheat, tepary bean, and cowpeas all together. Very happy. And as I said, this is very little moisture. And I was amazed and wondering, you know, how on earth can this happen? Now we're on a fine sandy loam soil, so it holds moisture moderately well. We're in a river valley, not too far from a river. But the big thing is when you go out in the morning really early and you go to the plants, they will be wet with dew. And I think this, you know, the dew maybe is condensing on the leaves and running down to the roots, because we are not giving them enough water that as one would think they would need to grow and look as happy and as healthy as they do. A little bit of data. This is just average over 2 years, biomass. So surprisingly in our study, the cowpea, iron and clay, cowpea was actually the highest biomass of all our samples. The cowpeas all did well. In this study, we didn't use Sudan grass. We used we didn't use sorghum. We used Sudan grass, and that's not so big. And I think it's because we, you know, had such a limited amount of water applied. And then you can see the blue right down at the bottom. This is the Tepary bean, and this is what I was saying. I don't think it's fixing nitrogen. And our Forbs here. Yeah, not very much biomass, but still maybe you don't need a lot of biomass. It's a beautiful plant. Next slide, and this was legumes. And so you are adding a substantial amount of nitrogen to your system with these, with the cowpeas, you know, 250 pounds, and maybe you would assume you would get 100 pounds. And what's this one over here? I think this is hemp sesbania, also doing really well. Big differences between the cowpeas, and we have the Tepary bean down at the bottom, along with the Forbs. So I hope I've timed this right for my 15 minutes. I have some suggestions. I wanted to include this photo. It's a field day we held at the Plant Materials Center in March. So it's cool season cover crops. And one of the things when I started at the Plant Materials Center, and I would go to growers meetings and people would say, oh, well, you know, it might work in North Dakota, it's not going to work here. And I got in touch with seed companies and actually planted initially just single plots. And this is back 10 years ago, and we're still planting single species plots now, about 40 or 50 different things. And it's not replicated, but it's good because you get to see what works where you are. And it actually varies from year to year. So it gives you a really good feel of what you can and try and grow out more. So I really recommend that when you're starting. You know, you don't want to put a big investment in, but a packet of seeds and planting it and seeing how it does. You learn a lot. And the reputable seed companies are very helpful. We have a document on our website with the companies. I think I've shared that with you. And just continue to look into it. I was really interested in the previous part about growing sweet peas. Well, what a great idea. And then don't get disheartened, because there's a big learning curve for any new skill, and you don't, you know, success with cover crops is based on experience. And this is my final slide. So please visit our website. We have number of documents there. I've given some to Joel to share with you, but there's more on our website, and you can look up and see what we've done, and also, of course, contact me with questions. Thank you.